before we start, I thought it'd be useful to actually say what is a prep school, because it's a term that is bandied about quite a lot, and actually for some of you, you may not know what a prep school is. A prep school started in the 19th century to prepare children for the great public schools of Winchester and Eton. So by that definition, they were for boys. Boys to transition at 13 plus via the common entrance route into these great public schools. Girls, however, obviously weren't supposed to be educated at that point in time. So the girls' schools that came a little bit later, they started at 11. So a number of prep schools actually were created to prepare for that transition, which is why sometimes people are confused that the girls' schools started at 11 and a lot of the boys' schools, or the boys' schools who were traditionally all boys and became co-ed, transition at 13 plus. So the whole idea of preparation was to prepare for the common entrance exam, which happened at 13 and was the way in which senior schools would select their pupils to go to their schools. Things have changed, as you may be aware. Most senior public schools are now pre-testing and doing assessments in year 5 and year 6. And I would urge you that if you are thinking about a senior school, your children probably should be in a prep school quite early. Year 3, year 4 is probably the latest you want to leave it, so that the schools can start preparing them for those pre-tests at that point. However, the most fantastic thing about a prep school is not just the preparation for these tests. It is about developing your children, giving your children a childhood.
There are a myriad of different prep schools out there, and each of them have their own ethos, their own values. But what I would say is that modern prep schools offer a super standard of education for the pupils. And particularly our prep schools now, they balance the traditional values with the modern day approach when we look at innovation and when we look at new teaching and cutting edge teaching that's coming forward. Your first decision is going really to be what type of prep school are you looking at? And there are a significant number. Single sex. Actually, can I just move? Thank you. Single sex, co-ed. Only you can decide, but I would suggest you look at both. What is right for one may not be right for another. Day or boarding. When you're looking at the day market, particularly in London, it's going to be far more day unless you wish to come out to some of the country schools where it is going to be more of a boarding element. You might be looking for something that might have a particular religious affiliation. And again, there are schools here that have that. Depending on your child's ability, there may be schools out there that provide a specific education for them, a special provision. And again, there are a variety of schools for those. And I'm sure the bugbear for certainly Emma and I is whether or not parents are looking for a selective school or a non-selective school. An all-round school. And again, that's for you to actually ask the questions. Is there a specific senior school that you're interested in? See if those prep schools are actually sending pupils to them. Are they providing support for those entry tests, for those scholarship tests? And how many children are they actually sending on to those? A school like mine, we're not a conveyor belt to any particular senior school. In the last couple of years, we've sent on to nearly 17, maybe 20 different senior schools at the end at 13 plus. We are aiming to find the right school for our children so that they will flourish. And in partnership with you as parents, I think that's something that's really important for you to consider. Yes, we will prepare your children for moving on, but we also want to get it right for them moving on into senior schools. Over the years, there have been many conversations about small class sizes. It's very much, I'm sure, something that you are looking for, and they will remain high on the agenda, as is favorable staff to pupil ratio. But over the last 4, 5, 6 years, it is more important that the person who's standing in front of your children and teaching them is of a high quality. They are the ones that will allow your child to develop, to make progress. So you will find now that those small class sizes are starting to increase a little bit more. And that's where prep schools really excel. So some possible questions for you to consider when you're looking for a prep school. How will my child be taught? How will those staff know my child as an individual? And I'm sorry, in my mind, no matter the size of the school, a good teacher, a good staff common room should understand what the individual is capable of, how they are going to challenge them, and when they need to support them as well. How broad is the curriculum? What subjects are being taught and when? Is it mixed ability teaching? Is there streaming? When do they start setting? And ask them particularly, how do you measure my child's progress? And is my child aware, or will my child be aware of that progress? Will they become self-aware young people so that they know where they are and where they need to move on to? How will my child be supported pastorally? What happens if things go wrong? What do you do? What policies are in place? What procedures do you use? And going back to something I said earlier, how are you going to challenge my son, my daughter? But more importantly, when they start to struggle or where they don't see something, how are you going to support them? What are you going to do? How does the school embrace technology? How does it embrace innovation that I talked about earlier on? And for me and for schools perhaps that may be outside of the capital, but I think this is also pertinent for those schools inside the capital, how do you facilitate learning, not just in the classroom, but outside? Taking their experiences out, trips, visits, and using what they've been taught out in the big bad world. What extra opportunities are there for the children? Because actually a prep school education is full of opportunities. We want them to try things. We want them to experience things. And whether that's in the extracurricular program of clubs and activities, whether it's sport, whether it's in the creative arts, music, drama, all of those things add to the development of the child. What is it they do? How is sport taught? What are the school's values about sport? Competition, sport for all, improving my child's skill level, but also will they learn how to be a good team player? And how are you preparing how are you going to prepare my child for the future? And this is something that's very warm to my heart at the moment. It's looking at a change in the job market. For those children now who may be going into reception at year 5, age 5, when they're coming out into the job market, 65% of the present jobs are going to be completely different. And you will see your children needing to have transferable skills in order to actually move through. So what are the schools doing in order to facilitate that for them? So in looking at prep schools, the key is to identify what your child will actually gain from the chosen school. But also, as parents, what are you going to get? Because gone are the days when you send your child off to a school and then you pick them up at the end and, yeah, that's great. You are part of their education. So you must remember that you are in partnership with the school. Are they going to provide that individual attention? Are they going to provide that extra support when it's required, both with learning, but also in the other areas, and support for you in making decisions moving forward? Are they going to encourage your child to think for themselves, be curious, ask questions, and not just be sponges? Because they are sponges, but we want them to think for themselves. And the school that you finally choose, is it going to be a stimulating, warm environment where your child can still be a child for as long as possible? Because they still learn so much as children. And at times, we are very much guilty, I think, of removing that childhood from them. So when you're initially looking, as you've done today, you're around, you're looking at stands, but also speak to friends, speak to acquaintances. Personal experience and word of mouth can be the most powerful piece of information that you can get about these schools. Bearing in mind they're both positive and negative. The negative being those parents that may not feel that they've got the best from the school that they thought they were going to get. So do have a balance with regards to that. Websites are there, they're all lovely, get a feel for it. And there's normally an abundance of information on them. And if it's a good website, you should get a feel for the school from it. Open days, they give a flavour. I would always say go and have a personal visit. Go and have a personal visit. Gauge the atmosphere and the ethos. Meet and speak with the staff and, more importantly, the children. Speak with the children. They will tell it as it is. I can sit at in my chair and speak to prospective parents and tell them anything that I want. But I also want them to see my children, so what I have said is actually the truth. Yeah, the children wear their school badges with pride. They are our true ambassadors, so talk to them. But to finish from what I've got to say, I mean, I suppose a colleague of mine noted that choosing a school can be a lifelong decision. Although some of you might only be looking for a specific stage of education, whatever stage you're looking at, the choices that you make now not only are likely to impact on your child for years to come, but they will shape the way that your child will develop, will grow into a young adult, and more importantly, for us, a confident learner, prepared not just for senior school life, but for the teenage years and then on into the job market. So, do a bit of research and then get in to see some of those schools. Shortlist a number of them, visit them all, and ask the probing questions. And in the end, you must feel that you would trust the school to develop your child educationally in all areas of school life. Sometimes, because the excellent schools that are available, it's very difficult to make a decision. And sometimes you may feel, in the end, you've seen 3, 4, 5, or 6. They're all providing things that you really want to see. Go with your gut. It's like buying your first house. That gut feeling, that feel for the school is just as important as asking those probing questions. Very, very brief. I said I couldn't do everything, but we are very open and would far prefer to listen to some of your questions and see what we can do to help you with regards to choosing a prep school.